Today's WebQuest wants to deal with the French and Indian War and the status of North America kind of leading up to the period of the American Revolution. So if we look at this first slide here, you'll notice that France is controlling the entire Mississippi River Valley. Great Britain is controlling that area up around the Hudson Bay. The 13 colonies are also controlled by Great Britain, and pretty much the rest of North America is controlled by Spain. Now, what had been happening is that the colonies had been growing larger and larger and larger, and more people had been coming over, both to the 13 colonies, the British colonies, as well as to some extent to the French colonies and also to the Spanish colonies. Meanwhile, France and Great Britain, who sort of always have kind of hated each other, are also beginning to find themselves in conflict in other parts of the world, including India and Southeast Asia and so forth. And these two countries, France and Great Britain, and their respective allies, the Indians and the colonists, are going to end up going to war. They're going to go to war in North America, and they're going to go to war worldwide. Now, in North America, that conflict is referred to as the French and Indian War. Worldwide, we call it the 7 Years' War, but it's exactly the same conflict. In the United States, we often name wars according to who we are fighting against. So the Vietnam War is the U.S. versus Vietnam. The Korea War is basically the United States versus North Korea. The French and Indian War is the United States, which isn't the United States yet, but the colonists versus the French and the Indians. So it's the colonists allied with their British supporters versus the Indians who are allied with the French. And they'll fight. It will be a reasonably bloody war. And in the end, to make a long story short, the British will win. Now, I don't really care that you know the specifics of the war. There, of course, are some wonderful stories. The French and Indian War, for example, is where George Washington actually first makes a name for himself. It's where General Braddock, i.e. kind of Braddock Road here in Fairfax County, gets its name. General Braddock came over, was killed. There's a whole story about how George Washington was shot off of his horse and became quite famous, etc., etc. At the end of the day, what we ultimately care about is that France loses the battle, and so we say goodbye France. Everyone say goodbye France. Goodbye France. France disappears from North America, and as a result, Great Britain sort of takes over all of this territory. Now, let's look at what this is. If you're looking at the slide, this is a slide of the actual fighting of the war, but as I say, it's not such a concern for me unless you're a real military historian. Now, what we do care about are the results of the war. When we look at the French and Indian War, we often kind of consider it to be one of the leading causes of the American Revolution, and we should look and see why. Well, what is it exactly that Great Britain wins when they win this war? Well, a key thing is land. That whole Mississippi River Valley, where the French had occupied largely because they were doing a lot of trading with the Native Americans, that whole area becomes British. Part of it becomes Spanish. The area west of the Mississippi will become Spanish territory, but everything east of the Mississippi will become British. So they have a lot of land, but, and there's a big but here, the but is that with that land come a whole lot of Indians, and the Indians are not leaving. So that creates a problem for the British. They also find themselves in big debt because wars are expensive, and fighting the French and Indian War is very expensive. And finally, they find themselves in a situation with colonists who no longer have anyone to fear on the continent. As long as the French were there, the colonists kind of wanted the mother country, Great Britain, there to kind of defend them in case France came rolling in to fight them. Well, now France is gone. The colonists have no common enemy. They have no need of Great Britain. Moreover, in fighting alongside the British commanders during the war, a lot of the colonists have sort of learned that the British commanders sort of like aren't, if you will, kind of all that. So they have united. The famous cartoon Ben Franklin put together, Unite or Die, I think kind of quite conveniently kind of captures that message. And that sort of coming together, that the long-term causes of the debt that was caused by the war, all of this will make the French and Indian War kind of a key cause of the American Revolution, which is where we will pick up next.